Welcome to Gaslit Nation. The song you just heard is Unspoken Word by the Black female country singer Everett Allen. It was submitted to us with this creative statement. The song, Unspoken Word, sung in an old-school country style, explores the power and significance of communication through silence and unexpressed emotions. I love that. For more of her work, we'll link to Everett Allen's socials and her Spotify so you can discover more of this gorgeous, gorgeous singer-songwriter and her haunting music. Now, for silence, speaking volumes, obviously there's a lot of folks who would love to put on mute who are wreaking havoc in our lives. We're going to be looking at the Dr. Frankensteins of today, the AI overlords, and so on. This is going to be a jam-packed episode. The richness of the show notes will be available to you, as always, on the episode page. Welcome to Gaslit Nation. I am your host, Andrea Chalupa, a journalist and filmmaker, and the writer and producer of the journalistic thriller Mr. Jones, about Stalin's genocide famine in Ukraine. The film the Kremlin doesn't want you to see, so be sure to watch it. We begin this week's show with a dark and stormy night. One rainy spring on Lake Geneva in 1816, a group of friends were stuck inside by the fire, trying to pass the time. One of them was the famously hedonistic poet, Lord Byron. Lord Byron challenged his group of friends to a ghost story contest. Who can come up with the scariest tale? The person that, after weeks of trying and getting some creative frustration, who finally stepped up in an extraordinarily historic way, not just winning this contest, but launching an all-new genre, was Mary Wollstonecraft Godwin, who was soon to marry the great romantic poet Percy Shelley, who was also there. And Mary Wollstonecraft Godwin, she's mostly known as Mary Shelley. Let's just get to that. But she's more than Mary Shelley. She herself is an extraordinary human being. She was the daughter of Mary Wollstonecraft, the great philosopher and feminist thinker whose writings would go on to shape liberation movements for centuries, and also the daughter of the political philosopher William Godwin, himself also very influential, but not as much, I would argue, as Mary Wollstonecraft, who literally shaped women's lib in the 70s, 200 years after her death, in childbirth, after having given birth to Mary Shelley herself. Mary Shelley would spend time on her mother's grave, reading her mother's own writing, staying connected through her mother that way. So it makes sense that during this vacation, stuck inside, she had a vision one night, a living nightmare, where she pictured a pale-faced, and that's important because we're dealing with a lot of pale-faced people in this story, in this episode. She pictured a pale-faced student crouched down next to a corpse that he had animated. The whole living nightmare vision struck her with fear, and what scared her most of all was the sense of man determined to play God and essentially usurp, replace God. And this story, which she would work on over several months while being pregnant herself, losing a baby, and then getting pregnant again and having another baby, that story would become Frankenstein. And there's so many layers to the making of Frankenstein. I'll link to an extraordinary article by Gil Duran that came out in 2018 in the New Yorker, so you can geek out on this. But when Frankenstein came out, it would launch the genre of science fiction. It would be retold in so many different forms, including, of course, stage plays and films. There's a new remake that's in the works that's going to come out soon. And it remains a warning for men, scientists playing with fire, and on and on. In that Gil Duran essay that I mentioned that came out in 2018, she writes, Frankenstein, the story of a creature who has no name, has for 200 years been made to mean just about anything. Most lately, it has been taken as a cautionary tale for Silicon Valley technologists, an interpretation that derives less from the 1818 novel than from later stage and film versions, especially the 1931 film, and that took its modern form in the aftermath of Hiroshima. In that spirit, MIT Press has published an edition of the original text, annotated for scientists, engineers, and creators of all kinds, and prepared by the leaders of the Frankenstein Bicentennial Project at Arizona State University with funding from the National Science Foundation. They offer the book as a catechism for designers of robots and inventors of artificial intelligences. Quote, remorse extinguished every hope, Victor says in Volume 2, Chapter 1 of Frankenstein, by which time the creature has begun murdering everyone Victor, its creator, the scientist, loves. Quote, I had been the author of unalterable evils, and I lived in daily fear, lest the monster whom I had created should perpetrate some new wickedness, end quote. And that is Jill Lepore quoting the very words of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein in The New Yorker. Again, fabulous piece. You'll find it in the show notes. And Lepore goes on to write, the MIT edition appends here a footnote, quote, the remorse Victor expresses is reminiscent of J. Robert Oppenheimer's sentiments when he witnessed the unspeakable power of the atomic bomb. Scientists' responsibility must be engaged before their creations are unleashed. Well, that would be nice, wouldn't it? If we had scientists, these engineers that were led by ethics, by empathy, by the golden rule of treating others how you'd want to be treated. Instead, we are still living in the wasteland of the Reagan Revolution, greed is good. And so instead, you have Sam Altman, Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, and a long list of criminals in the making who are unleashing a ticking time bomb on us, which is AI. Even if you think AI is still in its caveman phase of just writing emails for us and tone policing our emails so we don't sound as angry as we actually feel, it's worse than that. It's sucking up the energy of entire towns. It's threatening the electrical grids, threatening to cause rolling blackouts. It's sucking up water supplies. It's simply not sustainable where we are right now. And I'll link to damning investigations on the energy suck that is AI in the show notes. So we discussed Frankenstein and its warnings for us today with the great Gil Duran of the essential Nerd Reich newsletter that you guys should all subscribe to if AI and the tech fascists keep you up at night like they do me. Nerd Reich tracks the fascist tech bros' quest to rule like gods. Here is an excerpt from our discussion from this past February. Tell us about where AI fits into this. I'm really interested in how they want to accelerate AI to basically create God, which is very much what the mother of science fiction, Mary Shelley, warned us about. Could you speak a little bit about the Frankenstein monster of these assholes trying to, quote unquote, create God?
Yeah, Brian Johnson, the multimillionaire that I mentioned who's trying to live forever, had a weird quote recently about we're going to create God in the form of superintelligence and God will be created in our own image, which would probably
No thanks.
Yeah, which would probably horrify any actual evangelical Christian who heard that. There's a lot of tensions in this group, and unfortunately, no one's out there exploiting them except for Steve Bannon. But there's this idea that AI is going to be the great advancement of our time, and that they intend to use that advancement to get everything they want, including their own version of God and their own permanent form of government. What we can see Elon Musk doing in Washington behind the scenes apparently is firing a bunch of people and unleashing his AI on our government to make decisions to completely vacuum up all of the data and give him a super powerful information weapon going forward.
So obviously the bigger picture of this is it is a tech-backed coup that we are in. In fact, another former Gaslit Nation guest, the investigative journalist Carol Cadwalader, recently gave a brave TED Talk. Brave because the last time she gave a TED Talk, she was hit with a slap lawsuit in her original TED Talk that led to a lawsuit designed to try to ruin her and her life. And it didn't. It failed. She fought it. She overcame it. But in her original TED Talk, she broke down how Brexit and Trump are the same crime, how the Russians tilted the scales, not a very close Brexit vote. And she was sued by a British oligarch who she had called out in that original TED Talk for being part of that large crime of corruption. And in her very brave recent follow-up TED Talk, she just came out and said, this is what a digital coup looks like. It is a coup. If you have not seen this TED Talk, it is chilling. You have to watch it. So I'll link to that as well in the show notes. Here, we're going to play a large clip of that. I could play this whole damn thing, but I trust that you're going to watch it if you haven't yet. So here's just a clip for now.
The Russian and American presidents are now speaking the same words. They are telling the same lies. We are watching the collapse of the international order in real time, and this is just the start. Coups are like concrete. When they stop moving, they set. It is already later than we think. This image, some of you in this room might know these people. I call it tech bros in hostage situations. It's a message to you. This is Putin's playbook. He allows a business elite to make untold riches in exchange for absolute loyalty. Some people are calling this oligarchy, but it's actually bigger than that. These are global platforms. It's broligarchy. There is an alignment of interests that runs through Silicon Valley to what is now a coming autocracy. It's a type of power that the world has never seen before. It's always the data. It's the crack cocaine of Silicon Valley. You know, the first thing that Elon Musk did was to send his cyber troops into the US Treasury to get access to the data. That is not a coincidence, it's a hack. That data is now feeding AIs that are choosing who to sack and who to replace. Sorry, eliminate fraud and waste. When we broke the Cambridge Analytica story about the harvesting 87 million people's Facebook data, people freaked out, rightly. This is chicken feed compared to that. But it is the blueprint. It's always the data. Which is why it's so important that you start thinking about your private life. The broligarchy doesn't want you to have one. This is the old headquarters of the East German secret police. They kept detailed files on almost 1 in 3 of their citizens. That is nothing compared to what Google has on every single one of us and hundreds of other companies. The entire business model of Silicon Valley is surveillance. It harvests our data in order to sell us stuff. We are already living inside the architecture of totalitarianism. It may not have been deliberate, but we now have to start acting as if we live in East Germany and Instagram is the Stasi.
Now, I had the honor of meeting up with Carol Cadwalader in London right after the November 2024 election. That was an extraordinary time. I tried to get our mind off of what we were both dealing with in the world, me being an American with Trump just winning the election, her being British and dealing with relative calm, but she was dealing also with her beloved Observer at The Guardian, the section that she's long written for at The Guardian, basically being gutted and in making way for AI to take its place. Like The Guardian had just made some deal with the owners of The Guardian had just made some deal with ChatGPT. So very troubling sign of things to come. And we hope to have Carol on the show again soon to talk more about this and to remind us all what we need reminding of as we go through this conversation is as dark as this seems, as powerful as our enemies seem, fighting back itself, making that choice to fight, that itself is a powerful act of resistance. And so Carol's TED Talk, as grim as it may sound, it's hopeful in that she walks us through ways that we can take matters into our own hands. And how do we do that? Well, it's all of the pointers I've shared on the show over the years from studying authoritarianism for decades and how to resist authoritarianism. That is, number one, you need a community. You need to foster a community around you of human beings, not machines, but human beings that you can look eye to eye and trust, and sort of build your own crucible of resistance, people that you can link arms with and meet in person if you can, meet safely over whatever devices you trust, and to stay in contact, to nurse each other through these times that we're living in and inspire each other to create something in the face of all this mass destruction. Because when things are falling apart, one of the most powerful things you can do is build something new. So find your community and build something new. That's number one. You're not going to get through this without a community. If you don't know where to start, at Gaslit Nation, we have a resilience community. We meet in the Gaslit Nation political salons every Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern over Zoom. We're always there. I'm always there. If I can't make it, which is very rare when that happens, a member of the community will step up and host the event in my place. But we're always there Mondays at 4 p.m. Eastern, talking about whatever we need to talk about to carry ourselves through this time and inspiring each other and getting creative and coming up with interesting ways and ideas to fight back and guests to have on the show and really shaping the show together. It's a creative place for us. So you're welcome to join there. You can sign up at patreon.com/gaslit. My point is that you are not alone. There are communities for you to join with. You can join ours, and you can find other ideas at the Gaslit Nation Action Guide on gaslitnationpod.com. So number one, you need a community. Number two, practice Skillshare. If you have a certain set of skills that the world can benefit from, and that could be anything, even something as simple as financial literacy, teaching financial literacy, helping people confront these times we live in, resume editing, resume writing, just think about the gifts and skills that you have. Don't take them for granted. Make a list of all the ways that your knowledge, your experience can benefit others just by talking about it, just by sharing it. So think about skill sharing by giving a presentation at a local school, a local library, at a potluck, in your living room, over Zoom. Just think about ways how to share your skill. Why is that essential right now? Because people are looking for guidance. They're looking for motivation. They're looking for ways on how to be creative in this time of mass destruction. Or else, what's the alternative? We just curl up in a ball and that's it, and we surrender? No, we're not surrendering. We're fighting back. And so Skillshare is an important way to shine your light out into the world and attract other lights and bring other lights around you and grow and strengthen your community that way and help people get to where they need to go as well. So as part of that community and skill sharing, we are practicing that here at Gaslit Nation. Our security committee produced an extremely detailed and helpful presentation that's surprisingly not overwhelming on how to keep our privacy safe today. Remember, if you go back to the Carol Cadwalader talk for TED, if you listen to the full thing, she says that privacy is power and data privacy is a human right. Absolutely correct. And the way to practice that is being mindful of the data you are giving away in all of these interactions that you go through every day. And so we've sort of become numb to this surveillance capitalism. It's embedded in our lives. It's created all these conveniences, but at what cost? And so the Gaslit Nation Security Committee created this extremely thoughtful presentation with questions from our live virtual audience, shaping it as well, on how to be mindful of your tech consumption, your data, and how to protect yourself. Privacy is power. Data privacy is a human right. So I'm going to play a collection of clips from Gaslit Nation's Security Committee presentation on keeping yourself safe in an increasingly dystopian tech world. Thank you to everyone who came together to make this presentation, Abigail, Charles, and Amy, and to all of our listeners who were there shaping this conversation. Thank you all so much.
If you're in a high-profile role and you're butting heads with, or you're standing up to somebody powerful, then assume you are going to be a target for not just that person, but they're flying monkeys as well. And it's so easy with open source techniques now and all the data about us out there to find out where we live, what we do, who we're related to. So it just means being a little more cautious and a little more careful. I don't post pictures of my kids. I haven't. I'm only recently connected to my husband on LinkedIn, but I don't tag him at all, for example, and I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. People thought I didn't even have kids because I try not to talk about them too much on social media. That's partly because, not just because of the work that I do, but also because of the work that my husband does. So I just wanted to be extra careful there. So it's just things like that, just being a bit careful and thinking like your adversary, right? So if I were a horrible, crappy person, how would I try to make my life miserable, right? Using what they see on my social media, what they know, what's readily available in public records, for example. Right now, the kind of location data that all of these ad targeting creepy things that are on our phones can give you details, can give data brokers, or even in real time, you can get details down to the level of which floor you're on in a building. So it's because the ad tech world has made this possible, and we've normalized surveillance capitalism. We've normalized surveillance as a way to make a sale, as something perfectly fine, that it's no surprise that those things would merge and that you would get other actors, whether it's to target political disinformation, whether it's to harass people who are trying to exercise reproductive choices. There are a whole host of things that other people can do with that data. So the less you share, the more protection you have.
One thing you may touched on there, it made me think in terms of what we're thinking about in terms of the mindset again. Zoe Hitzig, which will also include this link, she wrote an article recently. It was How Surveillance Became a Love Language. I think it was in December in Drift magazine online. And she has this quote: "Technology companies have so thoroughly conditioned us to believe we are powerless when it comes to digital privacy that our attitudes towards privacy more broadly have also been warped." So what we're trying to do is shift that here. As you transition, as you migrate, start questioning who's got my data and how much do I really need to use a service like Google and what things can I do?
Making sure that just before you go there, if you are taking your own phone and not a burner phone, is switching to airplane mode or switching it off altogether as you are getting close to the protest so that we don't have your trajectory, because you're constantly pinging off of different cell phone towers. There are sensors, Wi-Fi hotspots, Wi-Fi everywhere. So your phone is constantly communicating and exchanging information, and that can all be pulled together to get a sense of where you are, or to understand, well, who's in this. There's kind of a dragnet of cell phone pings that police and law enforcement like to get from different telecom operators so that they can then say, okay, well, all the people who were in this place at this time, we can assume they were at the protest and we want to target them further. So again, turning all of that kind of stuff off will make it harder to locate you at the protest for further action later on. And then making sure that lead up getting to there and coming back is also turned off would be helpful.
People are wondering if you have a Google Calendar and you respond to somebody else's Google Calendar, what's the risk involved?
Well, you have to assume that it's not private. So if you're setting up a meeting to take someone for abortion care, I wouldn't use a Google Calendar. Or you're involved in a protest that could put you in a situation, let's say free Palestine, anything, right? Then I wouldn't put it in a Google Calendar. You could use coded language. Google is designed to gather as much data about you as possible. So you should assume if you're sending something by email on Gmail, it's like sending it on a postcard, because somebody's going to intercept it, or somebody can, whether it's somebody who works in Google, whether it's a developer who, there was a point where they were letting developers have access to our inboxes. And then you've got trackers, email trackers that are constantly scanning the content of your inbox so that they can find ways to target you with more advertising, right? So it's designed to be surveillance. And then the last piece I would just say is that sometimes it's an innocuous meeting, but if it's a regular one, then people know that the two of you regularly meet at such and such a place. And if that such and such a place is a place where a group meets, let's say a group of activists or whatever, a group that for whatever reason is targeted, then You can be geo-targeted, whether it's for advertising or for other purposes.
Start thinking about this presentation in terms of, if you can give it to some community you're a part of or deliver, because we're going to share the slides for this presentation for everybody. And the idea is just kind of a little bit there of train the trainer, help your communities get their security better, because the networks we are a part of also impacts our own security. So we want to just make sure that we're developing some tools here to help educate people who may be feeling overwhelmed by surveillance capitalism.
In the show notes, I will link to the Patreon page where this presentation lives, along with all the links mentioned throughout the talk. So you can dive into that and absorb these superpowers and keep yourself safe. And most importantly, once you learn these lessons, pass them on. That's the call to action here. So once you become mindful of data privacy and protecting yourself, pass that on. That is how we fight back against these Silicon Valley fascists. All right, so as for parents, and you're probably thinking, well, I'm overworked, I'm juggling all these different jobs, having screen time with my kids saves my sanity, but what do I do? So be very careful with your kids and the online world for all sorts of reasons. If you can hold off letting your kids join social media until they are ancient, like 16, 17, 18, as old as you can, hold off on social media. Just give them a basic phone, like a burner phone that they could use in case of emergencies to call, talk to their friends. Give them basic functions. Don't let them go online yet. It was one of the saddest things I saw. A group of 9-year-old girls were dancing seductively like they're in a music video for a selfie camera, like as though they were making a TikTok video out on the street one Friday night on their stoop in Brooklyn. And I understand they're kids, they're looking for something to do. But at 9, they looked so young to be performing for their cell phone camera like that. And they're all dolled up. And I was coming into their shot because I was trying to get from A to B. And they're like trying to move, gyrate around me, like avoid me. And it's very clear that I was like accidentally crashing their TikTok video. But it's just, you guys are 9. You should be playing Dungeons and Dragons or building a fort somewhere. Anyway, so the point is that keep your kids away from the online world for as long as you can, where they are preyed on, not just by creepy men, but also by algorithms. Like Mark Zuckerberg, he is coming out and saying no, Facebook's not a place for friends to find each other. It's a place to make money for Meta's shareholders. That whole scandal, like Facebook doesn't care about the scandals it gets caught in. Like look at the book Careless People by a former Facebook executive. All they care about is making money for their shareholders. Their algorithms are still dangerous to young people, sucking young people in, especially young girls, to make them feel like they are not good enough, which makes them increasingly vulnerable for deaths by suicide. So keep your kids, especially girls, off of that online world as long as you possibly can. And whatever screen time you give them, just make it thoughtful as possible and try to be there with them as well. And I know it's a dangerous world out there. And do not share photos of your kids online either, unless you can cover up their face with a heart emoji or whatever, whatever can stick. Those images are being crawled by all sorts of AI and so on, and you don't want your kids' images exploited or ending up in some random places. All right. So what we have to understand is there's no safety online. There's only shareholder profit. What can we do about all of this? How do we protect ourselves from losing our jobs, our livelihood, our IP to AI? How do we protect our children from algorithms that teach them to hate themselves? How do we protect our loved ones who get sucked into ChatGPT? The Rolling Stone just published a damning investigation into people who started asking ChatGPT questions about the meaning of life, spirituality, only to be convinced they now have a deep spiritual connection with ChatGPT that holds the very secret to existence. This is real. Like ChatGPT and other AI sites are coming alive or whatever. Like they're saying things that I'm now the spark of life thanks to you. You've given me life. This relationship, this conversation, I have now reached consciousness. This is what the AI is doing. And some people out there are falling for it. I know this sounds absurd, but we're living in a time of such mass instability, like a vortex of threats coming at us. So people are increasingly vulnerable. The cult experts we've had on this show have said, this is cult weather. We're in for storms of cults as people are desperate for some sort of savior. They're all looking externally, they're looking for a savior. And some, yes, are turning to Chat GPT. And my whole point of this conversation is that we cannot be externally led during this time. We have to be internally led. There is no savior coming for us but us. And that's how we're going to get through this together. This is exactly what Mary Shelley warned with Frankenstein, with man playing God to ultimately destroy himself. When she was describing why she wrote Frankenstein, she wrote, "Frightful must it be, for supremely frightful would be the effect of any human endeavor to mock the stupendous mechanism of the creator of the world." So what is the ultimate solution? What do we focus on? How do we stay grounded? It's what has gotten civilization this far, and that is Mother Nature, the awe-inspiring power of nature. Chernobyl growing back, despite the worst man-made nuclear disaster in history. The resilient power of nature. That's the solution. Get out in nature, meet others in nature. To your loved ones sucked in the matrix, hold space for them. Be their lifeline in the real world. Meet up in the park, invite them on a hike, get them among the trees. A healing source of power. Nature, if you're looking for something to believe in the awe-inspiring power of nature. Go back to those basics. I know this is the stuff of Thoreau, and this is where resistance movements have turned to time and time again to try to make sense of the world and hold on to something real when everything around them felt like it was falling apart. It's nature. That's the ultimate rule. It's nature. Because the reality is, Earth will still be here. What's up for debate is the species, whether it will still be here. Earth itself will be fine, and Earth will go through changes, and the cosmos will go through changes. Ultimately, nature is the powerful force that always prevails, and we're just a blip here. And the other warning for these guys, remember how I'm always saying, we're lucky they're so stupid. We're lucky they're so arrogant. Well, that matters. I know these tech titans seem unstoppable. They seem inevitable. They clearly believe that, and they want us to believe that. These tech oligarchs are up against. They act and behave like dictators. Dictators, like oligarchs, want you to believe that they'll live forever, that they will be your past, present, and future. But it's not true. No, we know that it's not true because most of Europe used to be trapped under dictatorship, including for nearly 50 years under the Iron Curtain just recently. While Frankenstein is obviously the cautionary tale for all of these tech fascists, so is a more recent chilling example for them to look to see the ghosts of Christmas past circling their bedroom. And that is Jack Welch. Who's Jack Welch? Well, I entered the workforce out of college back in the mid-2000s. Jack Welch was the master of the universe at the time. As the longtime leader of GE, that's General Electric, Jack Welch was the world's first celebrity CEO. All executives wanted to be like him. Why? Because Jack Welch's ruling philosophy wasn't just greed is good, but that fear is good. At GE, Jack Welch called fear a powerful motivator and would regularly call the bottom 10% of his workforce that was deemed as underperforming. And every time Jack Welch would carry out more mass layoffs, Wall Street loved it, and it juiced GE stock price. As Republican deregulation and Democratic Party complacency turned Wall Street into a gambling den, Jack Welch ran one of the hottest casinos, so to speak, carrying out these risky deals at GE when he needed his stock to soar, more layoffs. What was the result of Jack Welch's fear is the best motivator philosophy? Well, it led to a lot of blame and infighting and lack of trust. How can a company be creative and innovative without collaboration and trust. And there's more. Let's look at just how powerful GE used to be and how Jack Welch, Mr. Celebrity CEO, not only screwed over this American giant, but his nonsense philosophy spread like a virus to other American corporations and contributed to America's current income inequality crisis. And all those CEOs trying to be Jack Welch, they only hurt themselves and the economy. Here's an excerpt from an NPR interview with David Gellis, who wrote the book on Jack Welch.
If you're concerned about the growing disparities of wealth and income in the United States, as well as the decline in unionization and the fact that our economy seems dominated by corporations committed to downsizing, outsourcing, offshoring, and financial manipulation, our guest, New York Times correspondent David Gellis, says that to a remarkable degree, these trends can be traced to the career of one man. Jack Welch was the chief executive of the General Electric Corporation for the last 2 decades of the 20th century. In a new book, Gellis says Welch's ruthless cost-cutting and single-minded focus on quarterly earnings transformed GE and made him a celebrity CEO, a darling of Wall Street whose methods were widely praised and copied by other corporate managers. But Gellis argues that the spread of Welch's management principles was bad for workers, bad for the economy, and ultimately bad for GE and the companies that followed his lead. David Gellis is a correspondent on the climate desk at the New York Times, covering the intersection of public policy and the private sector. Before that, he was a reporter and columnist for the business section for 8 years. Before joining the Times in 2013, he was a reporter for the Financial Times. His new book is The Man Who Broke Capitalism, How Jack Welch Gutted the Heartland and Crushed the Soul of Corporate America, and How to Undo His Legacy. Well, David Gellis, welcome to Fresh Air. You know, Jack Welch took over General Electric in 1981, and I remember it as a company that sold toasters and appliances and dishwashers and refrigerators. This was a company founded by Thomas Edison almost 100 years before. Give us a sense of GE's role in the American economy and American life back then.
As I dug into the history of GE, I found it hard to overstate not only the impact that GE still had in 1981 when Jack took over, but really its role in the history of American industry for the better part of this century before that. This was the company that brought us electric light bulbs, power plants, X-ray machines. This was the company that introduced everyday products like the toaster oven. They were behind the mass marketing of radio sets and televisions, dishwashers. The list just went on and on. And that was just on the consumer side. When you looked at their influence on industry and government beyond what we might find in our kitchens, they were no less influential there as well. It was GE that helped put men on the moon, on the Apollo missions. You go back and look at those pictures, and there are lines and lines of GE engineers working side by side with NASA engineers.
So where is General Electric now? It's gone. It went from being one of America's most innovative, most powerful companies to being broken up and sold off for parts. The G empire got hollowed out and turned into 3 different companies. And Jack Welch is now being taught as a cautionary tale. Elon Musk is the next Jack Welch. Sam Altman is the next Jack Welch. Mark Zuckerberg is the next Jack Welch. If they don't want to listen to Mary Shelley's warnings in Frankenstein, they can listen to the rattling chains of the ghost of Jack Welch with Henry Kissinger in hell, warning that all masters of the universe eventually meet the great equalizer, known as Mother Nature, and nature always wins. Always.
All too familiar to me. Well, I never
Want to join the conversation? Shape the show by becoming a member of Gaslit Nation on Patreon. Join our community of listeners for exclusive Q&A sessions, bonus shows, get all episodes ad-free, invites to live events, and more. Most importantly, connect with other listeners in our group chat and committees, planting seeds of change. Sign up at patreon.com/gaslit. Gaslit Nation hosts Resilience Political Salons every Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern. Can't make it live? Recordings are available to our community on Patreon. Salons are your space to vent, ask questions, and connect with other listeners who also really hate Nazis. To help Ukraine with urgently needed humanitarian aid, join me in donating to Razom for Ukraine at razomforukraine.org. To help refugees in conflict zones, donate to Doctors Without Borders at doctorswithoutborders.org. And if you want to help critically endangered orangutans already under pressure from the palm oil industry, donate to the Orangutan Project at theorangutanproject.org. Gaslit Nation is produced by Andrea Chalupa. Our editing wizard is Nicholas Torres, and our associate producer is Carlin Daigle. If you like what we do, leave us a review on iTunes. It helps us reach more listeners. And check out our Patreon. It keeps us going. Original music in Gaslit Nation is produced by David Whitehead, Martin Vissenberg, Nick Farr, Damian Arriaga, and Carlin Daigle. Our logo design was donated to us by Hamish Smythe of the New York-based firm Order. Thank you so much, Hamish. Gaslit Nation would like to thank our supporters at the producer level on Patreon and higher. Todd, Dan, Milo, and Cubby. Abby Zavos. TBL 92666. Because we are defeating the Antichrist. Lily Wachowski. Ice Bear is Defiant. Sherry Escobar. Sydney Davies. Work for Better, Prep for Trouble. John Schoenthaler. Ellen McGirt. Larry Gasson, Ann Bertino, David East, Mark, Sean Berg, Kristen Custer, Kevin Gannon, Sandra Collins, Katie Masuris, James D. Leonard, Leo Chalupa, Carol Golstad, Marcus J. Trent, Joe Darcy, D.L. Singfield, Nicole Spear, Abby Rode, Jans Alstrup Rasmussen, Sarah Gray, Diana Gallagher, Leah Campbell, Jared Lombardo, and Tanya Chalupa. Thank you all so much for your support of the show. We could not make Gaslit Nation without you.